Welcome to the fourth branch program, the place for common sense. Today is Wednesday, July 31st, 2019. I am MD. If you are white, if you are a Republican, I strongly urge you to listen to this program today. It is almost exclusively made for white Republicans. You have been bombarded with information about different aspects of life of our society, and in this political period that we're in, it is without any doubt that you will be hearing a lot of things. Sometimes it's almost impossible to sift through and make a decision. Now, even if you get to the point of making that decision, when you make that decision, and if it is based on false information, false data, no matter how meticulous one is in making decision, it will always be the wrong decision. Now, we are not here to talk about the political domain that's currently ongoing. We're here to talk about an important social issue. And the reason I said white Republicans is because, well, in 60 seconds we will present to you why we say it is that important for white Republican in particular. Now, everybody or anybody can take advantage of what I'm about to talk about. You've been hearing from many people. It's time that you hear from someone who knows something about something. And that something we're going to talk about is something that I know a lot about. So stick with me. In 60 seconds, we will discuss the topic through the prism of common sense. Thank you for staying with me. If you joined us before, thank you. Your participation makes the journey a little bit lighter, a tad more bearable. If you join us for the first time, welcome once again to the fourth branch program. At this point, I would really strongly, if you have a friend who is a Republican, who is white in particular, I would really encourage you to invite that friend to listen to and to pay attention. The fourth branch program is not associated with any political party, and we at the fourth branch do not have any political agenda or aspiration. our ultimate objective is to perfect the union. And in order to do so, we ought to remove the biggest obstacle of all, ignorance. JFK said that the ignorance of one voter in a democracy impairs the security of us all. Thus, the importance of eradicating ignorance from our society. I said that this program almost exclusively catered, well, the first part of this program, because we do have a second part in which we will kind of comment a little bit about the debate last night, the Democratic debate last night, which you may or may not care to listen to. But this particular, the first part of this program is extremely important to listen to, because I have been personally paying a lot of attention to a lot of discussion about this particular social aspect in our society. You probably receive or will receive shortly an invite that I'm gonna paraphrase here. I'm not sure what necessarily it says, but it's kind of in the line of what you would see at the bottom of the screen that says starve the poor, feed the rich. Brilliant solution. Now that would have been funny if it weren't that serious, if it weren't that important. And the reason I keep pointing to the fact, I said Republicans in general, if you know a friend, if you are someone who is a Republican, and especially if you're white, and if you have friends who are white, even if you are not, I really strongly encourage you to get that individual, even if it's not now, but later on, to take a look at this particular, the first aspect of this program. Because a lot of the decisions that we've made in life, we made them based on information. No one makes any decision without information. We went through that argument before about people who say that they weren't influenced by Russia when they cast their vote. And I provided example to those individuals that even for those people who did not go to the poll to cast a vote, who stayed at home to cast a vote, were actually influenced by Russia. We're not going to talk about that because this is too important to digress from. There is sometimes, and it sometimes pains me to, and at times I feel almost like screaming at the top of my lung, trying to explain to Republicans in general the disconnect between what they actually believe and what their legislators, the people that they elected, they sent to Washington, or they elect governor and mayor and so on, and what they do. And the reason I say it's a huge disconnect, and the reason for that is because we know that nobody has time to find every detail about everything that's being done in Washington. And the sad aspect of it is the fact that we rely on other individuals to provide us that information, and those other individuals that we rely on, usually they do have an interest in not providing the right information, in actually misleading us because it benefits them. And as such, we've been going into, the country has been going in almost in a spiraling mode, and we could we can't ever get out of that predicament. Now I want to talk to you now about a very important aspect. When I said starve the poor, feed the rich, it's actually meant to be a sarcasm. It's meant to be a sarcasm, but in reality, this is not what it is. It is a thing. I'm going to explain, and I'm going to provide example, and I'm going to show. That's why, again, it's important that if you are a Republican in general, and you are a white Republican specifically, you need to pay close attention. This is not my opinion I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you data. I'm going to give you proof. I'm going to give you example as to why all this time you've been making decisions, you've been misinformed, and you have been making a lot of bad decisions because you're making them on false information. Since 1974, around that time, the Republican legislators in general, no, I'm not gearing up for a fight. I just sometimes prefer when I don't wear a suit to roll my sleeve a little bit. Since 1974, Republican legislators, elected officials, even people vying for the office of the presidency have been misinforming the constituent. 1974, I took that particular year. I started there in order to make the point to jump to today. At that time, a gentleman by the name of Ronald Reagan bid for the office of the presidency. And he introduced at that time a personality, the welfare queen. And since then, there has not been a single presidential election. Even during sometime governors election, local, domestic, state election, a number of Republican aspirants to that particular office use that stigma in order to divide the constituent and be able to reap the benefit. Now, you may not necessarily care as to the coining of that sentence, the welfare of that expression, the welfare queen, but what it meant to do at that time was exactly what those type of expressions do today, to stoke a particular group, whites, to go against another group, blacks, and thus elect the individual that go against the group that doing harm to them, in a sense, and I'll explain in just a minute. And this way you can guarantee that those damn blacks do not continue to do harm. But this particular topic has nothing to do with physical harm. It has to do with financial harm. A few months ago, I actually debated the topic entitlement, in which I talk about Medicare, Medicaid, all the assistance that individuals in need receive from our government. And the reason I did that, now I'm going to bring it back during this election season in order to dispel any myth that you hear, because you're gonna hear a lot of myth, because this particular topic that that I'm talking about now has been debated, I don't know for how long, how many times. And the reason I chose to discuss it today again, because something just happened that once again you, Republican in general, white in particular, are going to make decisions that are based on information to you about that topic, and I can almost guarantee you it's going to be once again false, because it has been for many decades, so it cannot not continue to be. And as I mentioned earlier, your Republican legislators, elected officials, people vying for office, public office, always lie to the constituent about this particular aspect, because they know, or they think, or they write, as a matter of fact, that once they talk about it in the way that they do, the constituent will buy it, even if they have no reason to, even if they know better, and yet they still do. Now, what is it? Since Ronald Reagan coined the expression welfare queen, a stigma has been placed on poor people in general, but blacks in particular, because that's what that expression was meant to address. At that time, Ronald Reagan used the expression to say, folks, listen, I'm paraphrasing here, but that was the gist. Not paraphrasing, I'm actually explaining. Listen, folks, black people, they don't want to work. They're lazy people. They're on welfare. And they take advantage of the system. I, Ronald Reagan, I'm here to put an end to that. That's pretty much the essence of the conversation whenever you hear elected official, especially people vying for the office of the presidency. That's the way that they always frame the conversation. Not too long ago, even in 2012, Rick Santorum used this exact same approach. Even when they don't say it as blatant as Ronald Reagan did, but the subtext is that because since then, white who do to rallies, when they hear those kind of things, they know exactly what the conversation is about. So a stigma has been placed on blacks, on poor people, because it benefits the individual who is telling you, the white person, usually Republican, well, actually always Republicans, telling you that. As such, you feel angry that, you know, those damn blacks, they're lazy. And by the way, I already explained that during the time I was explaining entitlement. I will be bringing that topic back and, of course, talk about each one of those things in greater detail, because today we ought to give you the gist, if you like, the kind of the brief aspect of this conversation. But as we bring that topic back, we will discuss in greater detail each aspect of assistance by the government in terms of helping people in need. So even Rick Santorum in 2012 did exactly the same thing. Now, you may even recall that Mitt Romney alluded to that in the famous 47% tape. 47% who were not going to vote for him because, you know, they always waiting for a handout from the government, and Democrats would give that. As you can see, this is not something I'm making up. This is something that's been running in the Republican circle and that continues on and it stays that way. But all that time that they've been telling you that, there is one aspect of that, actually two aspects of that, that's sad and annoying. First, let me say as clearly as I can, Republican politicians like to paint blacks as lazy. And you know the irony of this whole thing? It is Republicans, their ancestors, who actually were slave owners, who got rich and who have become better off, their family benefiting or everything of blacks working 20 plus hours a day. And those are the same people that call blacks lazy. Now, I just want to put that out there, but it's something that we will come back as we're discussing this thing in greater detail. But it always bugged the crap out of me whenever I hear it, because they paint that picture, and the picture that they paint stays anchored in our brain, and yet the reality of things is very different. But as member of the human race, we tend to act on information that's easy to digest, that's easy to remember. As such, those kind of stereotype stick around. Since 1970s, Ronald Reagan painted blacks a certain way. Even up to today, it's still the same brush that politician after politician continue to use in order to divide the constituent. And it works. It has worked ever since. So it's not like whites decide, especially if you're Republican, it's not like they decide, oh, this is lie. They continue to believe that's the case. Now, is it? Now, before I show you, I'm going to give you examples, not example that comes that I pull out of a hat, example that documented that you too can go to the original, to the roots of the source, to the sources, and verify for yourself. But it is important to know that when you're making that decision later on, you can make the decision based on your hatred for blacks, which I will show to you has a lot to do with that as well, coupled with misinformation. And that's the reason decisions that are made most of the time are made based on race, because there are so many things that's already ingrained rather in the back of your mind. When you making the decision, any decision, you think, oh, those damn blacks, I hate them, they're on welfare, might as well cut everything, every assistance. That's how hatred works. You're not in the way that, oh, people who actually are in need, people who want to get off the ground, need help in order to get off the ground, but rather all those damn blacks. That's hatred. And those are coming from people who claim to be Christian most of the time. That's the irony of this whole conversation. Now, let me show you the reason we say starve the poor, feed the rich. Brilliant solution. A solution that not only was proposed by Republican legislators, presidents, not just proposed, implemented in our government. And that's been that way ever since, and even under the Trump administration, which I'm going to show you now. That's the same thing that's been done. And you're going to see the stark contradiction between what Republican politicians have been feeding you and what is the reality of things. And as I always mention, this program, that's what we do here. We try to not just because we don't have a political stake. Our concern is the United States of America. Our concern is the future generation. Our concern is the well-being of the country. Our concern and our objective is to perfect the union. Misinformation, disinformation, wrong information, all that contribute to prevent this type of goal from being achieved, this type of objective from being achieved. And it's not by accident. Your Republican legislators have calculated that the only way to keep their job is to continue to divide the constituent. Now, despite the fact everybody has been bashing Donald Trump for doing that publicly in a very, odd way, but that's what Republican legislators in general have been doing. They're more subtle doing it, but they've been doing that all along. Nobody has talked about that. It's because they do it subtly. For instance, when Rick Santorum say, I'm not going to spend my time working and to give it to people on welfare. What do you think Rick Santorum was saying? What do you think Mitt Romney was saying when he said, I'm not going to worry about the 47%? What do you think he was saying? So yes, they've been saying that all along. Donald Trump happened to have a big mouth, so it angers a lot of people. But as far as Republican legislature, elected official, that's exactly what they've been running on, and they've been dividing the country through race in order for them to keep their job. And they've been very successful at that. You may remember George W. Bush tax cuts, don't you? Well, I'll zoom through that because that's not what we're here to talk about. I ought to make the point that I promised to you why it is that important for you to, if you are white and a Republican, to listen to it so that you can see how much your Republican legislature have been misleading you, how much places like Fox have been misleading you into believing things that are very far from being true. We're not talking about just lie, we're talking about blatant. It's almost like they use lying to their constituent as a strategy, and that strategy also does one bad thing to our society. It's dividing our society. As I mentioned, Donald Trump happened to have a big mouth, but Donald Trump is not the culprit. Now, very quickly, George W. Bush took over after Bill Clinton, inherited an economy with a surplus, and proposed a tax cut. The wealthy individual get really a tax cut. The people at the bottom get $10, $20, $30. Those who were lucky got $100. That's it. In the first year, the surplus turned into a deficit. Now let's fast forward to Donald Trump. Now keep in mind, the conversation is not about Donald Trump, it's about what Republican administration have been doing and how they've been misinforming the constituent, especially the white constituent, into believing that blacks are the problem in the country when it comes to financial, to debt, to public assistance, and so on and so forth. Because that's what they've been saying to you. That's what you have believed all along, despite the fact it is not so. But I want to paint the stark contrast between what Republican legislators try to do and tell you they try to do and what they do. And I think I mentioned that here before in this program. The major difference between Republican legislators and Democrat legislators is the following. The Democrat legislators tell you exactly what they do, which you may not like. And we're not talking about liking or not liking. We're talking about the approach taken by the legislator. The Democrat legislators tell you exactly what they're doing. The Republican legislators lie to you about what they're doing. That's the major difference between those two politicians, those two parties. Now, you may not like the legislation proposed by Democrat. You may not like the policies. That's okay. We're not here to tell you to like or not to like. That's not the point of this program. It's to present to you the information so that you can make decision even when you make the wrong decision, but you knowingly make the wrong decision, not because you didn't know. Because we're not concerned about whether you belong to a political party or another. And the only reason we mention in particular for Republican and white Republican is because this is a widespread falsehood that's been spread not only by legislators, by other parties such as, the Fox. So I want to make certain that when you're making that decision, you knowingly making the wrong decision, not because you don't know. Now let's go back to the conversation. In February of 2017, before the February, the famous month, February 2017, the day that Donald Trump was sworn in office, there was a party in the Republican Senate and Congress, and they start drumming the beat of tax cut. But what they never said, the tax cut would be a tax cut for the rich. The plan that Mitch McConnell had was to give tax cut to the wealthy individual and look how to cut benefits that help the lower class. And what I just mentioned to you, that's documented. And we are heading towards the detail of that. So the plan that Republican all of a sudden, by the way, they did believe that Donald Trump was the best thing that happened to them because they will be able to manipulate him. He doesn't know anything about government. He doesn't know anything about legislation. So they know this is manna from heaven. The tax cut that they've been dreaming about, they know it's going to be a breeze to do. So they promote drumming the beat of tax cut. They tell you, because I remember very clearly, Paul Ryan and company were going around telling you, the constituent, especially Republican constituent, you're going to get a huge tax cut. And on February 2017, they borrowed $1.5 trillion. The green part is what you, the people, we, the people, receive. The blue part is what wealthy individual and large corporation received. Now, didn't they say it was going to be a huge tax cut for the people? Didn't they say that? Let's look at that again. That's the legislation that they passed. That's the bill that they passed. They borrowed that money, and notice the word borrow. You borrow something, you have to return it with interest. So they borrowed $1.5 trillion. They borrowed $1.5 trillion. They give the people, we the people, you the Republican constituent, they use 0.3 of that money to distribute among all the people. By the way, it is a legislation, which means what I just mentioned to you can easily be verified. It is a legislation, a bill that the Republican passed on 2017. Both Congress and the Senate were under the control of Republicans, so Democrats could not do anything about that, and they sent it to Trump, and Trump signed it. $1.5 trillion borrowed, meaning borrowed has to be returned. In other words, it may not be you, but your children, your grandchildren have to pay that money back. But that's not where I'm going. I just wanted to make the point very clear. When Republicans say they do something for you, they lie to you. Because they borrowed $1.5 trillion and they only take 0.3 out of that to distribute among the people. Now, just a side note, I heard a lot of Republican constituents say, oh, it's better than nothing. I don't care if they give the bigger portion to large corporations and wealthy individuals. Well, you should care for two reasons. One, they lied to you about the money that they borrowed. They say you were going to receive that money. Now, if you don't care about people lying to you, then you should start paying attention. That's number one. Now, even if you don't care that they lied to you, but which money did you receive? I heard some of my fellow Republicans saying, well, I get an extra $40, $60 on my paycheck. This is more than I had. Well, that's true, but if you're talking about $40 and $60, then you're not really among the rich people. And one thing that you forgot about the $40 and the $60 I just mentioned, that's borrowed money which have to be returned. In other words, you, your children, or your grandchildren have to send that money back with interest. But three, and this is the most important part for those who think they get such a great deal, I get an extra $40, $60 when I needed it. You didn't need those extra $40, $60 because they had to be borrowed at a time that the country has been doing very well, because a country, a government borrowed money in order to help the economy when the economy is bad. The economy wasn't bad when Donald Trump took over the Oval Office. So you're a Republican legislator, and keep that in mind, keep that anchored in your brain, because that's the point I'm trying to make. Your Republican legislator had to lie to you in order to borrow money to give to the rich and give you scrap. But here's the kicker. You get $40, $60 extra and you say, oh well, I don't care, it's $40, $60 that I needed, that I can use when I needed it. If I have to pay it back, so be it. Great. How about the rest of the money that they give to the wealthy individual, to the large corporation? Is it also great that you have to pay that back? Well, is it? Well, it so happens you have to. Yes, we the people are responsible for the rest of the money that were given to the large corporation and wealthy individual. Yes, you can verify that. That's part of the bill. As I said, your Republican legislators lied to you. But even all that I mentioned to you, I didn't mention that to make the point of your Republican legislator lying to you. But I want to make the point to show you that the conversation has been misplaced in terms of helping those who are really in need. Now, you need the $40 to $60. So it would have been great that, okay, the money was borrowed to help you out when you need that help. But that's not what happened. What happened is the Republican legislators borrowed a huge sum of money and give you that much of it, but put the whole bill on you. And you hear correctly that we, the people, are responsible for the whole 1.5 trillion. That's the way the bill was passed. The large corporation that received most of the money has to pay zero, zilch, nothing out of that money. How is that for legislators who are working for you? Now, that's one. Now, there is a sense that there are some disagreement with policies that Democrats implement. Let me ask the question, which is better? That you have a legislator coming to you and lie to you about something that they going to do for you, or someone that tell you straight what they're going to do, which you may have some disagreement with, but the compromise can be made. Which one is best? Let me put it in a different way. If you were to be engaged to someone, and I'm sure if you married at some point you were, so you should be able to understand the example. And you find out by sheer accident that the individual that you plan on marrying, you plan on spending the rest of your life with, is cheating. Well, cheating is too cliche. Let's use a different example. Let's say you find out by sheer accident that the person is not this top brass that he portrayed to be. He's making good money, but he's not the top brass. Let's say, for sake of conversation, that he tells you that he's a director of pens and pencils. It's an example. But by sheer accident, you find out that what he really does is collect pens and pencils. But he makes good money. This is not matter for to break the relationship, but it is a concern because he lies to you or she lies to you. Now, which one is best? That person were to tell you up front that what I do is I collect pens and pencil, but it pays good money. I think we can make a living out of that. Versus the person tell you that I'm director of pens and pencil. Which one is best? Now the example is silly, and it meant to be silly. But the major point is the person lies to you. If someone lies to you, it's not someone that you can trust. It's not someone that you can believe. Now, obviously, it seems that Republican constituents may be okay with that. And that's the point I'm trying to drive home, that if you make a decision knowing that the individual that you're supporting lies to you, then you knowingly make the wrong decision versus you don't know that. Now, let's look at what I just mentioned about the money that Republican legislators in the bill that they crafted. They borrowed $1.5 trillion. They took 0.3 out of that and distributed among the people. And the major part, 1.2, they sent it to the wealthy individual and large corporation. But they take the bill, the whole 1.5 trillion, and they put it on us. Yes, we the people are responsible for the whole $1.5 trillion. In other words, Republicans lie to us. And it's not a small lie, because while we may not be around to pay for that debt, our children, our grandchildren will pay for it. It's kind of well, not necessarily oxymoron, but it kind of it's an irony that Republicans are always gung-ho about putting debt on our children, and yet they always the first to increase that debt. When Democrats are in the Oval Office, Republicans are up in arms about running a national debt. They run on that for local offices. But the minute that they have the lever of government, debt is no longer a problem. They can keep adding debt to our children and our grandchildren. Oh, that sounds good. That sounds fantastic. You see the problem? Now, let's look at the other aspect of the problem. So Republicans borrow money to give to the rich, but they put the bill on us, we the people. But we're going to look at the second aspect of the problem, which is what happened when they have to lend a hand to those who are really in need. What exactly do they do? How do they act? What do they say? That when we return.
Live from New York City, at the top of the hour, every weekday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. The Fourth French presents discussions, debates, commentaries on social, political issues, current events, sports, entertainment, religion, education, science, and every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. for a full presentation on controversial issues such as abortion, homosexuality, war on blacks. Are Republicans dumber than Democrats? Information which might irritate you, make you cry, make you laugh, but above all, will make you smarter. Join us every time. It is the right thing to do. It is the only way to keep your sanity in a world of chaos, hypocrisy, immorality, and deception. Welcome to Common Sense.
So what happened when it is time for Republicans to help those who are really in need? As I explained at the top of the program, Republicans like to use that opportunity to divide the country, because they try to tell the white that it's those damn blacks that are on welfare that are draining out the system. That's why we're running a deficit. I'm sure you heard that before. It's like we have to cut Social Security, we have to cut Medicare, we have to cut Medicaid, we have to cut those things because they cost a lot of money. And guess what? People who need assistance are mostly blacks. As such, whites make up the majority of the Republican Party, don't have any problem with that. Let's just cut them out of this whole thing. As you can see, Donald Trump did not start that problem, that process. Republicans have been doing it way before Donald Trump even fathomed the idea of entering politics. So of course today everybody look at Donald Trump doing a lot of bad things. He just goes to the extreme, but Republicans have been doing it all along. And the reason they've been so successful is because they've been telling their constituent whites that it's blacks that are taking advantage of those programs. As such, cutting it should not bother you. Which means they use racism in order to do what they've been doing, all the while harming the population, those who are most vulnerable in our society. And I'm going to show you that's exactly the case. Now, welfare is mostly known now as SNAP. So the expression welfare is not used, or rarely used, so use, I guess, modern terms to refer to people in need. But it's irrelevant which term that's used. In any society, industrial society, including Canada, that's right next door to us, recognize that it is the government role to help the most vulnerable among us, to help those who have financial need in order to lift them up. And it is ironic, the party that claims to practice Christianity, oh, it's a fly, and I managed to kill it. Unfortunately for the fly. Anyway, industrial countries recognize that it is the government job to do so. So they do it, and they have lifted people off the ground. Here in America, it's starve the poor, feed the rich. That's what Republicans have used as their mantra. And I don't say that to be funny, because it's not funny when we're talking about people who are in need, people who are starving. Because this is exactly that. Look at what we just pointed out to you. They borrowed $1.5 trillion. They didn't have any problem doing that. I didn't hear any Republican objecting to it. And they used that money to give to those who already have. At the time that was done, companies were reporting record revenue, record profit. In other words, companies are making money, are making profit, and that's the time Republicans decided, let's give you a little bit more money. So when I say that, I'm not making that up. This is proof right in front of us. They borrow money to give to those who already have, but when it comes to those who are actually in need, those who actually would need help from our government, they give you all kind of reason not to help. They tell you it bogs down the system, it increases the debt, it increases the deficit, it is a burden on the national economy. There is all kind of rationale. Now, all those rationale, where are they when they borrow $1.5 trillion to add to our debt to give to those who already have? Where is that rationale? And the reason it works for the Republican legislature who continue to lie, who continue to do so, is because they are very good at masquerading their argument by placing it on using blacks as a straw man, using the poor people, blacks in general, as, the lazy people who just waiting around for a handout from our government. Then why not cut it? Even if that were to be true, it sounds like a very Machiavellian rationale for an elected official to use in order to cut the benefit, the assistance for people who actually depend on those assistance. The $1.5 trillion were given to those who already have, to those who did not need anything. There was no problem doing it. There was no resistance doing it. But whenever it comes time to help those who are really in need, Republicans always give Republican legislators, not only they lie about it, because if you're that concerned about the deficit, you're that concerned about national debt, why borrow money to give to those who already have? Don't you think it's something you should ask your Republican legislators if they are that concerned? They are not concerned. They're really very bad people. And I don't mean that as a joke, because anyone who can justify borrowing money and put the debt on our children and our grandchildren to give to those who already have, large corporation and wealthy individual, and at the same time be able to justify cutting assistance for those who are in need, that person cannot be considered a good person. And that's exactly what your Republican legislators are doing. And the reason they're successful doing it is because they use blacks as straw men to tell you, support us to do that, because, those lazy people, we need to cut them off. And you also, if you are a racist, you say, yeah, why not? But let me show you that all this time you've been hurting not the blacks, you've been hurting yourself. You've been hurting white people. You've been hurting those who actually take advantage of those assistants the most. Now, to me, it doesn't matter who is. What matters is people who are in need should get help, should get assistance from our government. But because your Republican legislator tried to get you to think, it's blacks that are taking advantage of that. It's blacks that are draining our economy. It's blacks that are draining that are increasing our national debt. And you buy into it because if you're already racist, whatever they say about blacks sounds good to you. So yes, it's not Donald Trump. Your Republican legislators have been using race for the longest in order to make their argument. You just have not paid attention. Now let me give you those figures, those information I'm about to give you. They were provided by the Department of Agriculture. In other words, you can verify those information very easily. It's not just a damn liberal speaking. And for the record, I'm no damn liberal nor conservative. I'm here to provide you information so that you can make decisions, you can hold your legislator accountable because they're lying to you about what they're doing. What good person would do what I just described to you? Because when I say something like that, people are going to say, you cannot say people are bad people. Okay. What would you label them? This is Machiavellian for someone to do. You take from something that you could have used to help the poor and you give it to the rich. What kind of good person would do that? I'd like to know. I'd like for you to point to me to a good person who would do something like that. Instead of helping those who are really in need, you're taking whatever you can have to help them and then use that and give to those who already have plenty. Is it a good person? Would you consider that person a good person? I'm going to show you I'm going to show you an interesting data from Department of Agriculture, because those data were not made up by Democrats. Those data were not made up by an administration. Those agencies, their job doesn't change regardless of the administration. Yes, some administration may want something to be done to impact the job. For instance, in the case of Republican, whenever they're in power, they instruct the Department of Agriculture to cut on, I'll take the example, which is the reason we're talking about that today, food stamp. The Trump administration is trying to take the amount of assistance that Department of Agriculture would make available to people who are in need. But in terms of collecting the data, in terms of tabulating the data, in terms of making those data available to the public, it's always the same job. It hasn't changed. So if you have any doubt about what I'm saying, head to the Department of Agriculture website and you can search for all those information. And the reason I chose to do that here is because to show you that you have been misled by Republican legislators, you have been misled by other individuals who have a reason to mislead you. And the reason is always division, race. Because the reason Republican legislators do that is because they want you to stay on their side, because as long as they keep giving you a straw man, as long as they can make sure that there is an enemy, then you can always side with those who can defend them from the enemy. And that's something that's been going on for decades now. Ronald Reagan started with that, and it has never abated ever since. We'll be right back. Now, if you pay close attention to the screen in front of you, actually I meant to show you this. Pay close attention to it. This is data that were collected in 2013. I took that snapshot for the simple reason that during that time Obama was president of the United States. And you know how remember on 2012 when Mitt Romney think, oh, I don't care about those 47%, you know, it's blacks, poor people that's always going to vote Democrats. Now take a look at that. See, white, larger share of SNAP recipients, 40.2%. Blacks, 25.7%. Hispanic, 10.3%. Now, pay close attention to the last line that says race unknown, 12.8, almost 13%. If you watched this program before, you probably would know that those 13% also are to be added to whites, and here's the reason. During the time at some point in the past, and for some reason this still stays, at some point in the past, whites who did not want their neighbors, and that still continue, who do not want their neighbors to know exactly what they're on in terms of assistance, they always identify themselves as unknown. And the reason is because, let's just say the name is Joe, right? Let's just say the name is Joe Smith. Now, if the neighbor finds Joe Smith is on welfare, now if the race is white, then Joe Smith would sound pretty close to the neighbor next door. But if race is unknown, there is a certain dude, it could be the neighbor next door. It could be just two people who have the same name. In other words, if you add the unknown to the 40% of white, it automatically jumps to 50+% of white recipient of SNAP. I keep eating the wrong thing. It is. So when you hear your Republican legislators trying to stoke you into being against something because, those blacks, those damn lazy blacks who don't want to do anything in life, it's no problem cutting those benefits because, well, we're not doing anything wrong to whites. We're just doing it to blacks. And you go, yeah, why not? Why not do it to blacks? As I mentioned earlier, even if it were to be blacks, the major portion of public assistance, notwithstanding the fact that the country has made blacks, has put blacks in that predicament, it's a topic that we discussed at length during the time we were discussing slavery. And we don't discuss anything here without giving you points, references, and examples. So we don't say things just for the sake of saying it. So your Republican legislators, they have used race as a way to divide the country, because by telling you we have to cut welfare because we cannot accept that we go to work and we work hard and for other people to just sit at home and be lazy and take advantage of that. And you go, yeah. And the reason you feel that way is because you think it's blacks. And even if it were to be black, why would you not want to help those in need? Considering that you always claim to be Christian. Why would you not want to help those in need? That's question number one. But the question that's more important to Republican legislators, why do they always want to make life harder for those who actually need assistance and have no problem borrowing money to give to those who already have? Why is that? That's a question. Those are not philosophical questions. Those are things that Republicans are doing today. I just showed to you in February 2017, they borrowed $1.5 trillion. 1.2 of that went to wealthy corporation and large corporation and wealthy individual. And in the meantime, Mitch McConnell out there asking for public assistance to be cut. Those people are not good people. Now let me show you who exactly are getting those benefits. Now I just showed you the categories of people. 40.2% white, let's say 26%, instead of saying 25.7%. Let's say 26% black. And at the bottom, the race unknown, Let's say 13%. So in other words, we have almost 53% of white recipient of SNAP. SNAP stands for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. That's what SNAP stands for. Who do you think, and here's the part that sometimes I don't quite grasp. Do people who so much oppose, out of ignorance obviously, public assistance for people who need it, do they think people who actually are in public assistance want to stay in public assistance? That's what Republican legislators and those who are trying to divide the country in that line, that's what they're trying to advance. That's what they're trying to allude to, as if those people who need help, they feel so good about what they're getting, they say, I'm not going to get out of that. Not ever. Now, before I tackle that, let me show you what that assistance is for. Keep in mind, 40% white, 26% blacks. Keep that in mind. That's how it is divided. Now, look at the people who actually receive this assistance. 45% go to children. 45%. Another 20% go to disabled individual, people who are not elderly, and 17% go to elderly individual. Let's add those numbers together. 44.8 plus 20.3 give you 65.1, and you add 17 to it, it gives you 82.5. Let's say 83. So you have 83% of the SNAP program go to people who actually are in need of the SNAP program. But your Republican legislators say, let's cut those kids out of it. Let's cut those disabled individuals out of it. Let's cut the elderly out of that. Does that sound to you like good people? And the information I'm giving to you, not privy to me. Legislators have those information right in front of them. So those information are not information that I have and they don't have. So they know exactly the individual they're hurting. 45% children, 20% disabled, 17% elderly, old people. A Republican say, let's just cut them off. They have no qualm. They have no objection. Borrowing money, lots of money, to put on our children's shoulder, on our grandchildren's shoulder, to give to those who already have. They have no problem doing that. But when it comes to helping people who are really in need, they have all kind of rationale. I would feel much better helping someone on the street who is in need than hand my money to an individual who already have. But Republican legislators don't see it that way. Think about it a different way. You walk down the street, you see someone begging for money who has $1 in his hand. Someone else just gave to him. You took that dollar from that individual. You go further down the street, you see the same scenario. You took that dollar from that other individual until you collect, I don't know, $5-10. And then you meet with your buddy in downtown and you decide to buy him a cup of coffee with that money. That's exactly what Republican legislators do with our money. They take money, taxpayers' money, because no matter where the money is coming from, no matter how much money it is, it's always taxpayers' money. They take our money and they give it to the wealthy and to the large corporation. But they come to us and they say, you know what, we have debt problem, we have deficit problem, we're going to have to cut those things. You know, by the way, it's those blacks that are taking advantage of it. No, it's not those blacks. It's the children. It's the disabled. It's the elderly. No, it's not those damn black. It's the white. But you know what's even worse? Let me show you. When you hear on Fox, they bring some prop to say, I've been on welfare, I just go surfing, and I keep getting the checks. You know, they make it sound so bad that if you listen to it, you get angry about it because you're working, sleet, snow, heat, cold, you have to go to work, and then you're hearing some fool on Fox, someone that they pay to be there, to tell you that, hey, I've been on welfare and I've been taking advantage of the system. Of course, you get your source of information from those people who have every reason to get you angry to continue to divide the country, because that helps them. This is what, on average, people on welfare receive in food stamp per month. $125. Boy, wouldn't you want to be on welfare too? Not to go to work, just sit there and wait for the government to take care of you? With that kind of money that the government is helping you out with, why go to work? That's not a number that's made up by me. All that information is available on the website of the Department of Agriculture. They provide that information. It's available. You don't have to ask for it. Now someone is receiving $125 worth of food stamp per month, and you hear on Fox some prop that they paid to say those things, telling you, oh, you know, I just go surfing all day because, you know, the government is taking care of me. How far do you think $125 can go? The picture you see behind me of a veteran who is homeless on the street begging for money is not a doctored picture. It's a picture, an actual picture of a veteran. Now let me show you some more of that. Those are people who serve our country. They lucky they did not get killed at war. Most of them are on the street homeless. They depend a great deal on public assistance. Some already committed suicide, got rejected by a family that they left behind, they thought they still had, but unfortunately not. try to stay with a friend, didn't work out, they end up on the street. And you have your Republican legislators making rationale for you to support the idea of cutting public assistance for those who are in need, and at the same time justifying borrowing money to give to those who already have plenty. How is that? And that's your Republican legislators. No, my fellow Republicans, white individuals, it's not blacks who are on welfare alone. It's not blacks who are draining who are increasing the national debt. The people who need help in any society ought to get help. And we, who do a little bit better than they, should not have any problem lending a hand. And your Republican elected official should be ashamed to use race in order to achieve a Machiavellian approach of balancing the budget. If they were really interested in decreasing the debt, the first thing they would have done is stop taking money to give to the wealthy and the large corporation. But they're not doing that. If they were really interested in curtailing the deficit, they would have stopped borrowing money to give tax cut to the rich, to the wealthy. They would have invested in education for those who cannot go to school. They would have invested in health for those who cannot afford health. They would have invested in public assistance in order to lift up those who are in need of public assistance. What we have instead is a party which cannot care less about the deficit, which cannot care less about the national debt, but who use racism to divide the country and obtain support from those who already share those ideas. And that should be the ultimate problem for our country. We'll be right back. I sincerely hope those information were useful to you, or at the very least open your eyes to understand that your Republican legislators, they're not really interested in the well-being of the country. They say they are, and by all accounts they're not really good people. They make those decisions knowing the consequences. Because when you cut public assistance for those who are really in need, you're not helping the United States of America. Yes, you can justify doing that and at the same time borrow money to give to those who already have, large corporation, wealthy individual. The question you must ask yourself, why would any good person do that? Cut public assistance from those who need it, borrow money to put on our shoulders, but to give to those who already have plenty. That's not action of a good individual. That's not the action of anyone who claims to be Christian. That's not the action of anyone who claims they want to lift people off poverty. That is Machiavellian. And it is time you, my fellow Republican in general, fellow white Republican in particular, that you understand. If you have any concern for the United States of America, you would like to see better, and you would like to help achieve a more perfect union, I'm not here to ask you to change your political party, but you ought to pay attention, maybe change your politician, because as it stands today, they're not interested in the well-being of the United States. They do what benefits them personally, not what benefits the country. The veterans who served our country are now homeless on the street, relying exclusively on public assistance. Those children, those disabled, those elderly, they rely exclusively on public assistance. I hope once again those information were important to you, were useful to you. If not, you already know what to do. Send us your comments, your criticism, your suggestion. Let us know how to do it better. As I mentioned before, this program is not going anywhere, so you might as well help make it better. In the meantime, if you have a particular topic you would like us to talk about, let us know. We will research it, we will debate it right here on the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon or evening, whichever it happened to be. Hopefully you can join me again tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Good day. That was an update through the prism of common sense. Join us again tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. for a full presentation. I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. Send us comments, criticism, suggestion, or simply let us know how we're doing. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful afternoon. See you next time.